Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Yellen, Chairman Powell, welcome. Chairman Powell, congratulations on your renomination. I also want to express my appreciation to the Treasury Department and Federal Reserve staff because we cannot forget why we're here. We have passed, over the last couple of years, several COVID relief packages that were bipartisan support, except maybe for one of them, and the money was immediately put out to help our families, our businesses. And so your staff have taken extraordinary efforts not only to avoid an economic collapse during this deadly COVID-19 pandemic, but getting billions of dollars in relief and loans to help us manage the economy, help our small businesses, help families is a tremendous feat. And we should not forget that. So thank you to your staff who have worked so hard as well. Let me talk about something that is impacting my state, is the supply chain disruption, and I know you all are working on this. Secretary Yellen, President Biden announced a plan to address the supply chain disruptions. Now, it's clear that the low vaccination rates, repeated outbreaks, and an over-reliance on Chinese imports contributes to some delays and shortages. But Secretary Yellen, where has President Biden's initiatives to address supply chain disruptions been successful, and where are some of the current sticking points that might persist past the second half of next year?
Well, President Biden, the administration, created a supply chain disruption task force in June, and it's been working broadly to identify places where the White House could make a contribution, could be effective. And I think we're beginning to see progress at the ports. As you know, President Biden worked with the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, where there have been long delays in unloading ships waiting for many days to be able to offload their containers. They've agreed to remain open 24/7, which they're now doing. And also, the administration has worked with major retailers that were leaving containers for long periods of time on the docks without picking them up to make sure that they begin to expedite movement of those containers away from the ports. In other areas, in Savannah, the president has worked to establish locations away from the ports where containers could be brought, moved, and deposited to create more room at the docks to keep cargo moving. And so there are just a wealth of interventions and working really with private sector. These are private sector participants that are responsible for the supply chain, but bringing together parties. We're looking at ways that maybe we could work with states and cities to expedite the licensing, commercial driver's license, to raise the supply of truck drivers, which are in short supply. And of course, a lot of this is related to the pandemic, and it comes back to increasing vaccinations, boosters, get the pandemic under control so that demand patterns shift back toward more normal, toward services and away from goods. But there are a wealth of interventions that the White House is involved in.
No, I appreciate that. I think there is also a role for Congress to continue to support not only the administration, but there's legislation that we could pass to actually help us address this as well, which is why I support the Supply Chain Resiliency Act that has been introduced by me, several of my colleagues. It creates an Office of Supply Chain Resiliency at the Commerce Department charged with monitoring, researching, and addressing vulnerable supply chains. The office will provide loans, loan guarantees, and grants to small and medium manufacturers to allow them to address supply chain bottlenecks by expanding production. We should be prepared for this, knowing this has happened for the future, short-term and long-term. And so I appreciate your
Long-term is
comments.
important as well.
Thank you. I know my time is up. I will submit the rest of my questions to you for future response as well. Thank you again.
Thanks, Senator Cortez. Senator Scott from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for holding this hearing this morning. Thank you to the guests for being here with us this morning. I was thinking about the conversation I had over Thanksgiving with